report, which helped to inform our thinking. SDC then at the beginning of this year submitted that proposal to LGC. They sought some feedback from us and from Te Ao Marama around whether we supported an investigation. We responded positively, and in July they advised that they will indeed investigate. They have now sent us the document that's contained in this paper and are out asking for feedback on their proposed process. So next up, this is what it looks like. Obviously, the scoping exercise to begin in a couple of months' time to take us through to March. Deep dive investigation from March right through to August, and then they will spend best part of 6 months putting together a draft reorganisation plan. If that is successful, and at no stage during this they decide to halt the process, they'll hold a poll, and then that's a simple 50% majority, 51% majority is required. I would say, and I'll refer you back to some of the documents we've seen before, the flow chart. At every stage in this process, it says, and we could stop the process here. Carry on, we could stop the process here. Carry on, we could stop the process here. If it carries on through, it goes all the way to a poll, and obviously from there the public decide. We put in our, if I cast your minds back, we put in our feedback around this process, certain dates to avoid, certain bottlenecks that we'd identified, and some real pinch points. The TAs did the same around things like long-term plan, and also things like calving, things like the mutton bird season, things like opening weekend of duck shooting. So we put through a whole load of timeframes. They have considered those. One thing I thought was very interesting actually in their feedback is we listed a huge amount of community groups that should be consulted, and they came back and said, yeah, we'll talk to all of that lot. So it's going to be a very lengthy process indeed.
So this looks pretty good. That phase 3.
Yeah.
That's when it comes out to the community as a discussion point.
Yeah.
And we've got 2028 elections.
Yeah.
It's a good lead in to have a long discussion, people to sit back and think about it. Can we, we should be making a commitment as a set of councils to have something in front of people in 2028. And work backwards.
Yeah.
I know that's a discussion point, but
just on that, we're going to be conscious. This is their process. We feed into it. Rob Scott we can't actually say what rules are that they are independent.
But I'll just go further saying that the community stuff, this is where it will fall over, is on the community. If they feel a loss of engagement through the democratic process. So everyone, I've said this before, everyone needs a hall to drive to and go and sit down at a meeting. If people feel as though there is a chance of losing that, we won't even get to that step. So how can we have an individual, a Southland type process running alongside this? We can't let the local government commission talk about local democracy, can we?
I'll go around everybody and get their feedback. We'll get our opportunity and hold on.
We will have to do that ourselves.
I've got John, and myself, then Alistair, Lyndall, and Eric.
Just a question. It's quite a big process. Is local government paying for this? Who's funding this?
There's talk that they might spend the next 2 years funding just on our investigation, so they are funding it. There will be some cost to us that the assemble represents.
Through you, Chair, shall I just go through the next couple of slides, which might answer some of the questions beforehand? Is that okay?
I think if we go off that one, is it 50% across the province, or is it 50% of each caste? That was always the bugbear. I think it may have changed.
I believe it's across the region.
Across the whole,
yeah.
Call the vote.
because it was, that's why it says of votes cast, because previously in the Wairapa amalgamation discussion that I was involved with, more than 50% of the votes cast in the smallest province, the smallest district, which was Carterton, kiboshed the whole thing in terms of Masterton, Martinborough, Featherston, Greytown, etc.
Just to clarify that, it doesn't matter how many people vote, it's only as long as 50%.
50% plus one's all you
Plus
need.
one you
Pretty
need,
low bar.
which is, because I thought there was need to
Change
be
like
X amount
that.
of ratepayers, so to speak. at the
Brought
vote.
an MMP.
Okay, let's just, in terms of the timeline that they've proposed, obviously there's we suggest there's an opportunity for our input at the end of each phase, okay? Te Ao Marama, we've met with earlier on this week, and they are very keen to be more engaged in this process than they have done. They weren't consulted initially, so they're very keen to be involved. So that was a very useful meeting we had with them earlier on this week.
She seemed, is it just worth
Yeah.
digging in a little bit to that meeting?
Yeah.
So just to provide council with a little bit of background, we had the chief executives and some of the councils had an initial conversation at a social event, which at Warmers Farewell recently, and we're talking about how we best align efforts here and serve our communities. And so off the back of that, brought some of their teams together. So the invite was to every council and Te Ao Marama, and we had an initial meeting on Monday, which everyone was able to attend, except STC had to put an apology in. Off the back of that, we have got some suggestions which we talked about at the Gore District Council meeting last night, and I'll leave Sam to go through them, but these are ones that have come from that collective group and have buy-in from the staff across those organisations.
We've made a commitment to meet again for the following 2 Mondays as well, and a timetable to be decided from then on in. Thanks, Rach. In terms of the engagement, we were very keen, and this picks up a point made by Councillor McDonald, very keen that the LGC actually base someone in Southland, as opposed to this kind of fly in, fly out. And also they talked about they may engage, and if you look in the proposal they put together, they talk about may engage, and we thought that should be will engage. So there's multiple references to that throughout this document.
So Sam, I'm just sorry to interrupt. It said that Tammy wasn't firstly engaged by the commission.
No, not by the commission. No. They have been engaged by the commission all the way through.
Okay. So I was just wondering, was that a misstep or they didn't quite understand?
No. I believe that the when the proposal, when they were asked to investigate for their views on the proposal, whether an investigation should go ahead, that was the first time they'd had any dialogue around that. So in other words, prior to it going to the Local Government Commission, they didn't have any engagement or any input.
So it just proves that we know our area and our people best, doesn't it?
I've got a few people waiting. You happy with the next slide, or we do it now?
Let's see the slides and then we'll know whether our questions are relevant.
Okay. We talked about potential cost savings as well, and just being really clear up front how much this process is going to cost. There is staff time involved. It says here a reasonable amount. Estimates are around a 0.4 or 0.5 of an FTE all the way through, and obviously that doesn't come cheap. And it will be very lumpy though. It says here peaks and troughs. You know, there will be information required, a lot of effort having to go in to provide that information. And this will really be, a lot of this will be information that maybe sits behind the long-term plan. And then we may go quiet for a few weeks, and then there will be another flurry of activity. So that's probably how it's going to pan out. We're looking for guidance here on obviously your views on this draft investigation process that they've sent to us, and also your support for working with the other TAs and also Te Marama around providing a joint response. So really back to you, and happy to take any questions on that. Rach, is there anything you want to add at this stage?
Just to note that Invercargill City Council workshop this on the 9th of September, and has a council meeting on it next week. Gore had a meeting, as I indicated yesterday. So there's been discussions playing out across the different agencies, and it's our turn today, but I think there seems to be a general level of support, certainly from Gore and Invercargill in those council sessions for aligning efforts.
Okay. Alistair, you didn't get to have your say?
Just the total cost, but if it's only 0.4, is there other costs on top of that? 0.4 for FTE?
We don't know is the answer.
You would guess so, though, would you?
Lyndall, Eric, then Jeremy. Lyndall.
Just to Peter's point about the community, it's really important that we don't ask the question, I think, because the commission is independent, and so people might be a little bit more free and frank and honest with their. I understand your concern about including the community, but going by this list, I think there'll be a fair few, and there will certainly be some cons around it depending on what the commission present to everybody. So, and that also kind of relates to Alistair's point as well about it taking so long. Community conversations, as you know, take a really long time. So that's, in this case, I personally think it's a case of go slow to go fast. We shouldn't hurry this process because it's fundamentally going to change the region. So I'm not in a hurry. I would rather they did their jobs thoroughly. I have a question around, and pardon me if I've missed it because I only had a really quick look through this paper, but are there checkpoints for us with check-ins for progress? And I mean, I know they've got the cycle if they can pull out any time they like, but do we get kind of regular updates, or do we have to wait right to the end?
Well, through you, Chair, I was actually very impressed with. I hadn't met all of those LGC staff before meeting them in person. I was actually very impressed with them, and certainly they had every intention and take them at their word of keeping us informed all the way through the process. Again, we've had another bit of correspondence from them this week where one of the councils, we're not sure who, asked some questions, and so they have sent the answer to those questions to all of the councils and Te Marama as well, to make sure that everyone's on the same page. They are desperate to be fair in this process.
I've also got some suggestions around some of the groups for consultation and stuff, but I can come back to those later.
Eric.
Yeah, this, as we're aware, became with an initiative from SDC with 2 unitary councils. My question is, and I'm not opposed to a unitary council, but I've got no way of knowing how effective a unitary council is. And at the moment, we've got Mayor Scott running around saying, well, I've talked to Gisborne, I've talked to Tasman. Now, if you're wanting an example of the 2 worst flooding experiences in New Zealand in the last few years, those are the 2 unitary authority, well, any kind of authority. And having some relations in earth-moving business in the Gisborne area who pleaded for 2 years to shift that bar, and no one could make a decision. As far as a regional council is concerned, we need to be absolutely 100% assured that the regulatory purposes of a regional council can be handled more than adequately in a unitary council. And how do we find that out?
Well, probably put your finger on it a wee bit, is that when you're all in the same building and you might have 6 that are on the other thing, it tends to be more permissive. Some people say that's good, but it tends to be more permissive than having a standalone regulatory body.
Through you, Chair, I would say that again, the feedback that we've received and the clear messaging all the way through from the Local Government Commission has been that the fact that a proposal from SDC triggered this process
Yeah.
is completely irrelevant now.
Yeah,
It is literally every single option is on the table and none have any more weight than any others at this stage.
But if I look at the affected parties, we're listed there.
Yeah.
So that means that there will be some consideration to a
Yeah.
unitary council.
Yes, we will.
And we need some very clear guidance as to how that will work and how good it will be, in my view. And I'm in favour of a single entity for Southland if it'll work, but I need to be persuaded.
Jeremy,
I've got a quick, just with affected local authorities engagement. So this is obviously other councils and things like that. Now, I'm just reading into it. Saying who is affected area. So if it's outside, then they talk about affected local authorities and then neighbouring councils.
Yeah.
Is that they're talking to them in regards to amalgamation? I've always been pro going over the border.
Yeah.
Is that sort of discussion, or is it just saying, oh, this man? I'm just trying to tease it out, make sure that they're, hey, we actually think we should talk to Clutha or something like that.
Through you, Chair, I think the key part of point 23 is the second sentence. If it becomes apparent during the investigation, any additional councils should be considered affected local authorities. This will be amended. So in other words, if a neighbouring council like Clutha gets promoted into the affected council round, then they will take it from there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I say, they do say the 25 and in person will be prioritised early in the scoping exercise, so that if there are affected, they'll be looking at. So I'm just, that's what that means. So they will look at everything.
It's definitely on the radar and quite clear.
well, I think you'll find that that will take pressure from Clutha to actually, because otherwise they're going to say you can only look at that region.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away CCO type things, but it would take quite a bit of. We'd have to basically have to have Clutha coming and saying we want to be part of the conversation.
Well, is it? Sorry, I'm just going to ask, just in regards. It's actually probably important if Clutha say, "Hey, we'd rather talk to you than talk to North than South." If they know this is going on, it would be up to Clutha to talk to the Commission. Is that right? Not the Commission's not going to look and go, "Oh, we should go and talk here." I'm just trying to.
Through you, Chair, they will speak to them as a key stakeholder.
So they're on the
they
list.
Yeah, I know they're
They
key,
will.
but it's just what
And they need to push their case if they.
Yeah, okay.
Chair, can I add a comment, Chair?
Yep, go, Rob.
And look, sorry, just picking up a wee bit late. But Eric's point about, do unitaries work? I guess in my experience and my knowledge of the sector, the natural resource side of it tends to be the poor cousin. And so that's going to be the challenge. How do you ensure that our functions are actually seen as a priority for any new structures and arrangements? I don't think there's and there's a lot of talk at the moment around the value of the old climate resilience. Some of the functions that don't sit easily with a unitary. So, I think it's a live conversation about what the option is going to be at the end of the day. So, just chucking it in. It tends to be the poor, our functions tend to be the poor cousin.
Thanks, Rob. Peter.
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple of things just on that. Jeremy's talking about the need in City Council quite often have these. Clutha wants to promote these, and have been for quite some time, to promote these similar discussions within the City Council. Clutha wants scale, they want population to afford their work. We should be very careful about engaging with a large network in a low growth, low population area, but that aside anyway. So just to talk about what I was talking for, and Lyndall counted me around local engagement around that. Is that something that this person from LG Local Government Commission could build a wee team in South and go around and talk to the community boards? Because I could very well say that the Hawke's Bay proposal fell down on local democracy. People felt that they would lose their voice. And I go back to Paul's area in Te Anau, most likely go there and they would say, well, what the hell have we got in common with Invercargill? Absolutely nothing. So it will fall on that if we don't pay that strict attention. That's the weak point. It's very clear it is. We might have the numbers, great, but it'll still fall over if we haven't addressed those community boards. Rob Scott says they're doing that work and continue to do that work. The other thing is who designs the structure of the council. But I think the most important thing is that when we have a status quo option, because I think we have to have a status quo option. What is the status quo? How do we get into these councils to see their deficits, their growing infrastructure deficits, and put a real rigor around what lies in ratepayers' futures of the status quo? Because people just say, oh, no, we'll just stay where we are, but they're not aware of what's in front of them. And talk to Rob Scott, he says, oh, it's all in our LTP, but people aren't going to go digging for that. So we're going to have, the Commission's going to have to put some rigor around what our next 30 years look like as a region and our affordability looks like. And it might be something to frighten people into one of those other two options, but we just can't go through saying, it is what it is now, people don't quite understand what they're voting for. So I think that's really, can we, through that status quo option, fully investigate that? Will the Commission do that to see what's in front of us?
We need to push that hard with them, and we'll have ample opportunity to do that.
Because it's quite frightening. We heard in Belfast, a small wee community of Belfast, there's $11 million budgeted to spend on that Three Waters scheme for the Belfast township. So look, I'm just saying that.
Just a comment, that would be the easiest option imaginable to cost and predict, because we've got it already.
We've got all the information.
Sure, that's going to be the easiest one to monitor.
Yeah, because people got to know what they're voting for. So yeah, I'm pretty strong on that.
Well, we're going to have plenty of, how do you see it, going to have plenty of work to do.
Yeah.
We're going to have plenty of options to discuss this with them through whether it's as a whole council or individual councillors or individual regions or TAs or whatever. And we can't preempt steps until we get to the first to a certain. Well, definitely we can't, because first step is they will move to the second step if required. So their decision will base on whether they're going to move or not. And they may get right to the end and go, look, you know what, it's not really a goer, or the negatives outweigh the positives here. Unitaries, funny to hear Eric say about Gisborne and Tasman. It is, and that sort of sticks with what Rob said about mental hazards become the poor cousin here. Yeah, maybe that is something that we, because a lot of district councils have very little understanding of the regional side of things. And unfortunately, they'll just continue batting on with their own work if we become a unitary, forgetting about what's required for the region and the environmental side.
And through you, Chair, remember, if as early as next March, they could pull the pin on this.
Yes.
If enough people are saying, look, we're just not interested, just leave it alone.
Yeah.
They've been burned before, haven't they?
Yeah, they do not want to go through that again. Where they got to a poll situation and the thing fell over.
Yeah, that's why we have to do background work to make sure.
Oh, yes, Sam, before you said that all options on the table, but it started off with the Southland District Council's option. So at what stage did it go from that one, only that one, to any option on the table?
Because going back to the very original piece of correspondence we had from them, where they said, do you want to investigate? It was made very clear that they will investigate the Southland District Council option and all other options. So that was right from the very beginning. There is no preference. They have no preference in terms of options.
So when you say all other options, those options that have been put on the table, or,
No.
or any.
Anything.
So we submitted our report but it's got no more weight than the Southland district. We had some conversations about maybe a derivative of the Manchester model where you actually kept more governance, perhaps had some little mayors, but hopefully they'll look at all that sort of stuff. You want to design something that'll work, and the key thing has always been here, we're losing local democracy. There's a number of mayors in the district would not enthusiastic look at becoming a community board chair, but you could have, with the size of the place, they may well decide that we'll have sort of community mayors that actually coordinate their community boards, etc., with a bit of a staff, but you had an overall do the big stuff. But we don't know where they're going, but in short, I think that all options are on the table, and as they get feedback, they'll add to their options, I'd imagine. Yeah. Okay. Peter.
Just want to ask, like, something to think about at this council. What would be our role once we get into an engagement period that would take some while? And I'm asking that is that we do have a rating relationship with all of those people that are going to potentially vote. The district council can't come into the city, we can't come into the city, but we can. So that's something to think about for us, how we could take some leadership on that engagement. I think that's quite important to consider.
The wee way to run, and we've just got to be careful that one entities like STC trying to push their own thing is that it's just
talk with Rob Scott on this civic, and I know we're in a closed room.
No, we're not.
Okay.
No.
Yes.
So those talks have been very, very productive.
I'm more concerned about how much time is spent with Rob Scott.
Well, it's,
Quality-
can
quality
I
time.
do that, or do I have to go through someone to do that?
Yeah.
good way to do that.
Good basis of time.
Okay, where are we?
I think it's pretty clear.
I was just going to say, like, I read through this last night, had a good look at it, and you felt quite comfortable that they're going to do a real thorough job.
Yeah.
And I was surprised at all the community groups. I'm sitting there going, oh, who have they missed? And you go, good grief, they got more there than I thought they would have, you know. And so even to the point of saying, oh, you better not talk to anyone at duck shooting time and things like that. You know, there's a bit of reality on this, but it's actually saying you've got everything there. So I feel, and they're doing different phases. They're going to be obviously working through it. And if it takes 2 years, if it takes 3 years, like it won't, that's fine, because it's going to be a major.
It's a life change.
Yeah, like it's a generational thing. This, so it's not about how long it takes. Make sure we do it right and thorough. We can sign it off either way.
Don't discount the amount of public interest there is right around the countryside. Everybody, if you go to Wellington, and everybody's asking about. So that everybody's going to be watching. So it's got to be a thorough process. You don't rush it, and watch for interest. I could well be on one or two of those groups. Not the ears.
Say what you want.
Yeah, look at that one.
Yeah.
National feeds.
Rachel.
Through you, Chair, I just wanted to test that council are comfortable with that first bullet point that's been suggested around the timeline. So as Sam took you through those key 3 phases, and what was discussed at a staff level was suggesting to the commission that there might be, say, a 6-week period at the end of each of those phases to allow time for council and mana whenua or tamarama to provide feedback on the findings of each phase, but that would add obviously time to the overall timeline. So just so you are clear, that's what the implication of putting that forward would be.
Can I just ask, you've used the term poll. Who's being polled?
So Sam's previous slide, the next slide, next steps. So assuming the draft reorganisation plan is developed, then there's the poll with the community about whether community wishes to proceed. And so some of the commentary on Monday was about the fact that at the moment, the way the timeline is rolling, the poll would possibly be about the same time as we all go out for consultation on our long-term plans, and communities previously been less than happy about more than one consultation happening at the same time like that. So we felt there might be some merit in raising the issue with the commission.
Would also affect the outcome of the LTP.
But that's a check-in poll, is it, to see if we're on the right track? It's not the main vote.
That is the
That's the
poll
main-
at the end of the
that's the
process.
main poll.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we
It
count
just
one
reads
vote
like
in
it's
elections.
been done every phase, just read a bit differently. But, oh, sorry, I'm just input at the end of each phase, and ideally poll would avoid double up. So it's
Yeah,
like
they're actually
talking about the first
two
sentence.
separate points,
two
sorry,
separate
not
points.
immediately clear. So there's the point about getting the feedback from councils and Te Marama at the end of each phase, and then a separate point about avoiding the poll timing with LTP consultation.
Amen.
That's great.
I have some things for the lists of people.
Okay.
Do you want that, or I just talk to you about that?
Through you, Chair, just send that to me direct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So there is an ability to put a referendum alongside an election. Would that not give it, the election drive some of the participation too? Could that be a good thing?
The process. Too late.
I mean, the pros and cons of it
2028.
is you're another 3 years out before you change things. So I think we have to wait to see how the process goes.
I'm not expecting that those dates will be, adhered to, it might take a bit while. So when we get into 2027, it's not going to be far to the local body elections.
LTP would be non-binding, so there possibly would have to be a second. Well, yeah, may line up, but yeah. Okay. Anything further?
Keep the ball rolling. Faster.
So we forgot we might be.
Slowly to go fast.
Would an appetite to do the second workshop?
No.
Might as well.
Thank you.
Let's go for it.
Some of the sustainability.
Thank you. Thanks.
Want to do what? Take over the universe? Okay. I just want them now.
Because I didn't think they were live streaming that one. That is a surprise. Right. Take the call.
Yeah.
No, he's gone to charge his phone. Oh, has he? Oh, right.
It's all pretty straight.
So he's not.
Pointing his finger.
Isn't ours better than this? Isn't ours
Yeah.
Might stay over there.
I am now? Yeah.
Woody Council, the under.
Just waiting for the chair. Here he is.
Sort of same here, no.
Sorry, Nicole.
Everybody else, probably some.
To go.
I'm right, everyone. We're going to restart the live stream.
Just be microwave.
I always ask the question.
I'm just telling you.
Somebody not got their computer muted. Yep.
No, right. We just checked.
Okay now?
Yeah, that we're good now.
Okay. All good. Your hands.
Right, okay. Well, kia ora, councillors, good afternoon. The purpose of the workshop today is to go with you the proposal from government via the Local Government Commission to develop a centralised and standardised draft code of conduct for councillors, which would be uniformly applied up and down the country. So I'm going to hand over to Paula at this point, and we'll just run through a brief presentation with you. Just if you just be there, okay? All right.
Okay, so we're Amy's welcomed you, so welcome again. So you've had the full agenda, which I've given you, which has actually given you the attachment of the actual draft code of conduct itself from the Local Government Commission. What I also gave you through that agenda was the terms of reference that was given to the Local Government Commission, and I've also gone as far as giving you pros and cons for supporting the draft code of conduct or actually not supporting the draft code of conduct. Part of that is actually pros and cons to both sides. And I've also given you a table that just actually has a wee look at local government standardised codes versus the Local Government New Zealand template, which is the one that we use at the moment, and also the comparison between the two and whether there was some consistency or flexibility. So I just want to work through that with you. What I have also done is actually given you a draft submission that is actually against implementing the standardised code, and I've also proposed a submission that actually supports implementing the standardised code. That's right at your back attachments. And then what I've also done, which is what they also asked us for, is if they do actually implement the standardised code, what other resources we could suggest to them that we might require their assistance with to actually implement the code itself. What Amy has also handed out is a submission that has been drafted in support of the code for you to read just as additional information. What I can also add to this, from Taitorea, sorry, and what I can also say, I have actually spoken to a counterpart in another council down here, and they are supporting having a standardised code. So we're just going to quickly zoom through our slides, and or we can just actually effectively, knowing that you've got all the information in front of you and not wanting to hold people up today, we can just open the floor for discussion on how you feel about the draft code of conduct, whether it should be standardised, and what things you think need to be strengthened, or what you feel is missing, or what you feel may be a problem. What I can point out to you in the draft code, which we don't currently do, is that staff and the community can make a complaint.
So that's different. So that's different from our code as it currently exists. It's just the councillors and the chief executive who are covered by the code, but this broadens the scope of where complaints can come from.
About councillors.
Yes.
We've probably got a few issues with that. They talk about not recognising the code. If you allow members of the public to put a snitcher on you, whether it's a certain group. I'm not sure that this was always about elected members. Consistency across the country, strengthening things, I think is a really good idea. Keeping that two-step process, depending on the severity of the thing, I think is good. Well, that's me for a start. Morris, were you?
Oh, yes, well, I was just looking at your arguments against it. The third one there says that it might require significant time, training, resources. What sort of things are you thinking about that?
It's just the implementation phase. So for the governance team is actually making sure that we are actually providing the correct training resources for the council and elected members, and again for the staff, making sure we've got the right processes in place if we do actually go with staff complaints and community complaints. It's highly likely those complaints could increase, and whether we actually look at those complaints as actually being frivolous or we get a lot of them, how do we manage those? So it's just looking at those sorts of things. It would be an initial increase in pressure on resources when we first implement. I think once it was implemented, that would actually ease.
But if you didn't adopt it and went for one of your own, that could be even more onerous in terms of working out what it should be, wouldn't it?
It depends if we stayed with the local government New Zealand template and they stayed actually assisting councils with actually drafting those templates. It would be the same process that we had been using, and the same thing that we did with the last code, which we adopted in April with the council. We'd just go through that same process again.
Right, we've got Eric, Lindwall, and Phil. Eric.
I'm a little bit perplexed. I wouldn't say that I'm opposed to the code of conduct, but I just don't see its value. They mention here the code of conduct that the New Zealand Parliament has. For 12 years I've presided over the Parliament. We never had a code of conduct. They have standing orders and speakers' rulings in Erskine May and a lot of other books and bits. And I had to look it up, and I found that it was introduced in the 20th of May 2022. One would have to say that behaviour in Parliament has not improved in the last 3 years. We have our own code of conduct, and a code of conduct is subservient to your standing orders. If you want to embrace something around behaviour, you put it in your code of conduct, not in your standing orders, surely. I need to be persuaded that this is somewhere we need to go and just spend energy on. We've got our own code of conduct, local, and we've got our standing orders.
Lyndall.
Yeah, I'm a bit of the same mind. I understand the need for some consistency across the country in the basic framework of a code. But, you know, as we all know, we've spent some time and energy on what I think is a really good code of conduct for us. And I am absolutely not in favour of having a full code of conduct for everybody that's the same, because we keep saying, don't treat everybody the same, we're all a bit different. And the standing orders is the presiding document, as Eric says. So a scaffold of, you know, the things that have to be included and basic stuff, but actually I think we should be able to set our own detailing processes around that, as we have done successfully so far. And also, to Nicole's point, it's about us. It's not about Joe Bloggs down the road having a snitch about something that Councillor Rodway said or I said or whatever. It's about us keeping ourselves safe and our colleagues safe, and having a process to follow when there's an issue. It's not about anybody else.
Bill.
Yeah, I had a couple of comments and a question. I'll start with a question. If this was to go ahead, do we have an option? Do we have to adopt it if it's implemented nationally?
You do, as I understand it, but I guess because it's, and that's the whole point of having a national one, is like everybody does it, right? But part of our ability to, and it's what we're canvassing your views on today, part of our ability about feeding back is about whether you would want the opportunity or request the opportunity in the central document to have the opportunity to make some tweaks or to make it fit for purpose for your own council. So that is a piece of feedback that you could give if you felt there was merit, and that which would mean that it's broadly similar to the local government New Zealand one. So acknowledging not everyone might want to adopt that, but it's a standardised document that allows the opportunity to provide for local flexibility.
Yeah. So one of the, the background suggests that one of the reasons is that council codes of conduct are poorly understood by elected members and council staff. That particular issue isn't addressed necessarily by a centralised one. That's just spending time understanding a code of conduct if one exists. So that would be my first time. Second one is this does change for us. It would make us susceptible to complaints from the public on our code. I would note that it would seem the parliamentary code of conduct, which is now in place, doesn't. It excludes complaints from the public on the code of MPs in Parliament. So we would be open to potentially the weaponisation of the code, and it's not just people in Southland. It would be anyone from across New Zealand could use that process to potentially intervene, derail, or at least soak up resources of our council. When I would argue that we have the capacity amongst the councillors and the senior staff through the CE to self-manage our code. So I'm supportive of the code, less opening it up to public, the potential for public to weaponise. I know there's a set of mitigations you could put in place around that, around frivolous and valid things, but that again is going to soak up additional resources, which to my mind is unnecessary in this instance. And you could achieve all of the other desirable outcomes without that additional dimension being added to this code of conduct. And the reason I say that is I've had members of the public unwittingly threaten to use our code of conduct against me without realising that actually they can't. Yeah, based on perspectives that I've shared on an issue on social media, and they've said, we'll see how you respond to this code of conduct complaint, which never eventuates because they can't.
Peter,
Yeah, no, of course, support that. I was going to ask that question. So some sort of an investigation, how much resource would it take up in time? And you talked about a drafting gate. Really, we're either in it or we're not, because that would be really hard to do for someone to sit there and say that we don't think this is genuine, we think this is genuine. But most people don't understand with investigations how much time and effort and staff it takes.
And stress.
Can we throw some understanding around that at all? Just a rough thing?
Yeah, well, it depends on the nature of the matter, right? And then you get into that, how long is a piece of string? So, for example, if you had a code and someone made a frivolous complaint, that could be, let's say, by the time you've had to write to people, you've had to assign your investigator, that could be 2 or 3 hours, let's say half a day of time, just to close it out and say nothing to see here. And that's staff time, that would be your investigator time. If your investigator was independent, there's costs associated with that, consultancy costs. And that's just for nothing to see here. And then you're only going upwards from that, depending on the nature of any investigation. That usually involves a conversation with the complainant, a conversation with the respondent. There might be witnesses, there might be paperwork that you have to have a look at. There's got to be time for consideration, feeding back. Then does it come to council for a decision? Are there conversations with the chair? The whole process can snowball from a time, effort and energy point of view.
So do you see there is potential to be overwhelmed in the work that you do in your department? If it gets used, probably, dare I say it, like the Lagoima, the Information Act, we have seen people use that right to its fullest, and I don't disagree with that.
Yep.
But see, some of the questions that we get asked, I'm worried about being overwhelmed.
Oh yeah, look, if there are not proper safeguards or, talked about guardrails before in terms of what constitutes a complaint and how you make them. If you haven't managed that on the front end in the code, then I foresee that could be problematic for the reasons that you've talked about around weaponising.
Yeah.
I've got Paul, then me, then Phil.
Yeah, no, can we just continue on with our own code of conduct without having to adopt?
Well, it depends what the government does. This is so we're just feeding back.
So if the government decide that we're all going to go on one thing, which is terribly, democratic, not, we can make slight alterations, because as Phil's mentioned around weaponising, it's not only individuals, it's groups, it's people that can do a lot of just a lot of damage, not just to this, but all local governments. So it may, has there not been other authorities gone back and said maybe it shouldn't have this in this?
But that's the whole. So everybody's getting, all the local government authorities.
So we'll just go back and say,
we've been consulted with at the moment. That's the whole purpose of this exercise, to grab your feedback so that we can respond.
It's just making things more bureaucratic.
Yeah.
And say as an example, if we came in and there was a group that decided that they were just going to weaponise it, go multi-buy, the rest of the community is just going to say, come on, this is just costing us a fortune because you're poking the finger and starting fights effectively. So we need to be very cautious on that. And if it was national, like all around the area, then it would just be such a detriment to our local government.
So the process, so I'll clarify the process for you. What we're doing here is collecting your feedback to actually send a submission, which has to be in by the 26th of September. Then by the 20th of December, the local government commission needs to get the results of that to the government. So 20th of December, that's the next date. That's quite critical for us. So it gives you the process.
We just don't want to be, we want to be in line with central government. We don't want to be an exception to the same, as you were saying, the central government, they don't. So I'm happy to go with the local government thing, but just highlighting the fact that with that, we wouldn't be keen, sort of thing. With that part in it about.
But a slightly different view at the moment. We've actually just gone through a code of conduct review, which I think is fairly reasonable. You must have a code of conduct and a standing orders thing in place at all times. And this is probably more about us submitting to these changes that may come in. And okay, people are looking from the outside saying there's not enough penalties for somebody who's madly behaving about. A lot of those things are good. My recommendation would, at the moment, submit on the bill, but leave things where they are at the moment. Wait for the dust to settle rather than rushing and saying, yes, we're going to go with this before we actually know what's in it, because that weaponising having the public, I'm totally against that. But at the end of the day, your code of conduct and your standing orders is about us treating people with respect. That's what it comes down to. As soon as you start to give the unintended consequences of somebody, whether it's the taxpayer union or somebody else, wasting a whole lot of money and actually trying to put undue pressure on it. I would have some real concerns with
What needs to be recorded? It's well made.
Well, just to extend that further, even if there isn't a code of conduct that enables members of the public to make a complaint, based on what I found, there's still at least 10 other pathways that someone can initiate a complaint against me as a councillor, depending on what it is that I've done wrong. And that's without this code of conduct thing. I'm happy to share what I've found if that supports your analysis.
Sorry, through you, Chi, can I just come back to a point you made, which is there is a draft code of conduct here. So we've got a pretty good idea of what the government is proposing in relation to standardisation. I mean, on my read, it's not too dissimilar to what you have already, save for the matters that we are traversing currently in relation to that. So I think part of that, you can contemplate the specifics within it, but I think there's also a principled decision that you need to consider around whether there's benefit in having a nationally consistent code, or whether there's an argument to have a code that's specific to this organisation. So there's sort of two parts there. Do you think standardised code's a good idea? Yes or no?
No.
And then if it was to go in place, so remember this is we get to have input, but we don't get to have the final say. So this may be coming at us anyway. If it is coming at us, are there changes or matters that you would like to record or have the government pay attention to in relation to that?
Given that and what other people have said, I think that draft submission should be against the code, as you set out here on page 25. It's very reasoned. It's suggests more local input, but it still maintains a code which protects people and makes people safe, as they say, rather than the other submission which you've got there to say that we support it wholly and fully. So I think we support the need for a code, but it needs a better local input.
Yeah, I'd agree with Morris and remind us that ours is based on the LGNZ version, right? So actually ours is not completely unique already. There's a fair bit of uniformity across many of the local government authorities anyway. So we've kind of got that already. And as I say, looking after ourselves is our top priority. And if the general public, don't like the way that they're behaving, they're not ticking my name on the box this month, are they? That's where they, ultimately get
They're gonna
their say about my behaviour or my intelligence or whatever they judge me on. I think I agree with Morris. I think to your submission against the code, generally speaking, that's where I'm at. Thanks.
Yeah, just to be supportive of Phil's point, one of the modifications in the Resource Management Act that they just spent some time doing was the issue of standing. You can't actually oppose something unless you've got relative standing. And I've used this example before, that there's a woman in Auckland every year opposes the dredging of Deepwater Channel in Milford Sound. And the Times has held that process up for 20 months. She's never even been to Milford Sound. And, there are people who actually like to get involved, and good on them, but they need to have standing or substance or something to do with that. I just see that as opening a door which at some point will bite us.
And just on I think rather than just a primitive note, I think we should comment on the various sections. And I still believe that the complaint is reasonably minimal, that it can be dealt with locally. They're basically saying, no, it should go straight to an independent thing. Immediately you've got costs and you've got a time frame. And or something minor that just puts stress on. More guidance on the appointment of investigators, absolutely, because I think seen in the past other entities that have gone for somebody quite dodgy. So that sort of stuff I think is good. Agree with everybody else. This should not be something members of the public can use. I think we should be quite strong on that. But this is about code of conduct for councillors and staff. It's not for mainly councillors. This the ability to have to talk about the wet bus ticket, which I've used in the past, strengthening the code for severe non-compliance. I think is good. We've got more tools in the toolbox at the moment. We've virtually got nothing. Interesting here, what they're talking about defamation and the ability for qualified privileged defence. Probably just got more questions about that than what would that cover? Would it mean that people thought they could say something? At the moment, you've sort of got you've sort of covered to a certain extent, unless malice is involved. Would be good to have some protection, but need to be very clear that it doesn't allow some people to think, I've got there's no comeback. Spoiler.
Okay, any other comments on the specific provisions?
Thank you. Hold on.
Well, no, hang on a minute. I'm not clear about
which direction.
Whether it's a yes or a no. Do you support or do you not support?
So the question for my mind is, in its current form, I find it difficult to support. I could support an amended version of a centralised, standardised code of conduct.
Raise hands.
Guidance for staff. I think what Phil said we probably all agree with.
So just so I'm clear, you support a standardised code, but not in its current form.
No, I don't.
I still think we use it a lot in other things. National direction, but the ability to have some regional flavour. So good to get consistency, but allowing you the flexibility that you don't get stuck with something.
That's what I mean. Yes.
The conduct of a meeting is determined by the will of the people who attend it. And that is not determined by a code of conduct. It's determined by their will to be constructive and go forward. And I'm opposed.
Stick with what we got, is that what you're saying?
Yep. We've got more than enough.
What Nicole said.
I think the beauty of the local government New Zealand version is that it allows us to tailor.
Yeah,
exactly. Which is what we've done. We're leading by example.
Okay, so next steps, just very briefly.
next steps are, we will redraft a submission. I think we need to probably,
We might be able to get that out to you in, the chief executive's correspondence, yeah, or the email that you get once a week, and then we'll bring back the finalised version, which will be after the time frame, but just for show and tell at the last council meeting on the 8th.
We've got S&P next week.
Oh,
That'd be
yeah.
Too soon, will it?
Maybe not, yeah, so yeah, we might be able to, okay.
take it to S&P.
Or
if
we've
it's
got
ready.
we've got a council meeting off the back of
Council.
that to do the RFP, so we
Oh,
could,
yeah.
yes, we could maybe do it as part of that. How does that sound?
About the start.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Great.
Thank you.
Declare the
The
work.
workshop closed, whatever.
Yeah, we're gonna go to start.
Thank you, everyone.
Good, thank you.
Yes.
Where's your next meeting?
Yelling, the stressing and stuff. And there's no code